What's up, A3 crew? Pilot 83 here. Today we're continuing on our training with the Jetliner Fsacademy. So I have been going through all of this, checking it out, giving my personal thoughts after each lesson. Shout out to Fsacademy for sending this my way to preview for everybody who doesn't have it and let them see everything firsthand. I've been pretty impressed so far. We're going to continue going through it, and at the very end I'll give my total thoughts on this add-on and what I think about it, if it's worth the money. But so far it's been great. So let's continue on. This is lesson number 5. This is descent. So let's go ahead and click on descent. So it's descending an airliner is an exercise in energy management. Learn the methods used to bring us back into thicker air as efficiently as possible. Since it's 20 minutes, let's go ahead and get to it. I'll see y'all where they spawn me in the air. Alright, pilots, here we are. Let's do it.
We're just levelling off at flight level 350 as we await further descent clearance. Let's look at how we manage descending from high altitudes. Descending an airliner from the cruise is an exercise in energy management. To descend most efficiently, we use a couple of rules of thumb that first calculate at what mileage to start our descent, and then another to monitor our progress on the way down. We're looking to start the descent at the right moment and then get us to lower altitudes as seamlessly as possible, with minimum levelling off in between. Choosing the right moment to start going down allows us to stay in the cruise for as long as possible, where we're flying most efficiently. Our first rule of thumb is to divide our flight level by 3 to get the distance at which we should start descending. If we're roughly at flight level 360, dividing by 3 gives 120. This means we'd want to start our descent when 120 miles from our destination. If we were cruising at flight level 300, dividing by 3 gives 100, meaning 100 nautical miles would be our descent point. You can quickly estimate our miles to go by looking at the range arcs on the navigation display. At the moment we have about 130 nautical miles to go, so we know we'll need to start descending in roughly 10 miles. Of course, this calculates only when we would ideally begin descending, but ATC requirements and other traffic will complicate matters. Jetliner 488 requests further descent.
Jetliner 488, roger, call you back, traffic below.
It's very common to have to delay descent if there is another aircraft passing underneath us, or to keep us within controlled airspace. In this case, we turn our attention to energy management, which is the control of the aeroplane's inertia. Reducing our airspeed in anticipation of a descent reduces our energy and allows us to trade altitude for speed once we do start descending. Use the Speed Mac button to switch back to speed mode and select 230 knots. The thrust now comes back and we decelerate, losing energy. Now that we're travelling less quickly, we're covering fewer miles whilst we wait for further descent clearance and can wind the speed back up again once we start going down. Just like open climb, open descent sets idle thrust and uses pitch to achieve our target speed. Starting slow and then setting a higher speed target once we start descending will make the nose drop and give us a steeper descent angle, regaining our desired profile.
Jetliner 488, descend flight level 200.
Descending flight level 200, Jetliner 488. Okay, set 20,000 in the FCU altitude window and pull the Alt knob. Now see how the auto thrust sets idle power and the nose is lowered in open descent mode. With a low airspeed, our drag is also relatively low, giving only a moderate descent rate.
Alright, so we are descending right now 20,000 feet.
Now increase the selected speed to 290 knots and see what happens. With idle power, the nose is lowered further to achieve our target speed, increasing our descent rate. Rather than using the speed brakes, this is the more efficient way of descending more quickly, saving fuel and reducing both vibration and noise.
That's very interesting. That's something I actually did not know. I always did air brake or use vertical speed to do it faster. Some good knowledge there for sure.
Conversely, if you want to shallow off the descent, reduce the speed target and the nose will be raised. Let's try this. Select a speed of 270 knots. The nose is raised to slow us to our lower speed target, and our vertical speed reduces a lot at first. Now that our target speed is reached, the nose will lower slightly to maintain this new speed, but our vertical speed will be a little less than before. If you want to reduce your descent rate but don't wish to decelerate, you can also consider using vertical speed mode. We're going to be entering the cloud, so let's turn on the engine anti-ice. Modern airliners have some advanced flight management systems on board, which help to maximise the efficiency of the descent planning. The Managed Descent Profile, or VNAV, on Boeing aircraft calculates the descent path appropriate to the current flight plan routing. It considers many factors such as wind conditions, speed limits and altitude requirements. The aim is to keep us as high as possible for as long as possible, to keep us in the thinner air for longer, improving efficiency. The predictions can be very accurate, however one aspect it can't predict is when ATC gives us shortcuts. It is quite rare at most airports that an entire arrival routing will be flown, as it's usually more efficient and time-saving to provide a shorter route to landing. This can leave you vulnerable to having to struggle with high speeds and using the speed brake to lose altitude quickly enough after having your expected routing shortened considerably. This means it's best to use the flight computers as just another tool to help you, along with your rules of thumb, rather than trusting them completely. Now that we've calculated when to commence our descent, we use another rule of thumb to monitor our progress. It's very similar to our first rule of thumb, but starting with the distance instead. This time we'll multiply our estimated distance to go by 3, giving us our target flight level. If we expect 80 miles to go, 80 times 3 equals 240. We would want to be at flight level 240. Let's say we get a shortcut and now only have 70 miles to go. We can quickly work out that we should be at about flight level 210. This method works well, but it's up to you to use what you're most comfortable with. Continue flying us towards Barcelona and use the rules of thumb to control our descent on your own without any ATC. Manage your own descent, going down as and when you feel it is right to. I'll update you as we go with the mileage remaining and the altitude you should be at, so you can compare your descent planning with the ideal. As we pass Pumal, we have 60 miles to go. 60 times 3 is 180. That means you should be at roughly flight level 180.
I really like the rules of 3 and how they're going over that in this. This is something I've actually learned off of some real YouTuber pilots. Stuff that I use quite a bit. So I'm really glad they talked about that. Helps.
At Berger, we have 50 miles to run. 50 times 3, 150. So that's flight level 150.
But yeah, I use the rules of 3 a lot when it comes to distance out and the altitude I should be. So really glad they went over that. Really glad they went over that. This is definitely the only training program I've seen on the sim on the Xbox side that actually talks about that. The built-in standard jetliner training of the sim definitely does not talk about that. And these are things that just give you a very good idea. You know, it's not exact by any means, but it does give you a very good idea of where you should be at. As we're closing in to 10,000 feet, we need to slow our speed down to 250 knots.
We're arriving at waypoint Mammoth, giving us 30 miles to go. That's a target of flight level 90. Descent management comes with experience and practice. It works with any aircraft type, so once you get the hang of it, you can use this skill in all sorts of scenarios. We'll leave it there for now and return once we're starting to configure for the approach into Barcelona.
Alright, I feel like that one was very helpful, especially, like I said, speaking about the rules of 3, about dividing when you're trying to see what you should be descending at, what your descent rate should be, so you descend efficiently to get to the right flight level on time. And then when it's talking about your altitude when you're multiplying by 3. So great rule there. felt like that was very good information, because I feel like a lot of people struggle with knowing when to start to descend and what the altitude should be, and definitely when you're trusting the ATC of the sim, which is definitely sometimes very crazy and wants you to do some crazy drops. This is something that I always go by first over ATC in the sim. Not that I would not that that's something you would ever do in real life. You would always listen to ATC, but in this sim, yes, this is definitely so. Great work there, Fsacademy. Let's move on and do the next one. Let's do one more. Alright, we're now going to do approach. Experience the skills required for managing deceleration, configuration, and FMS before intercepting the ILS approach. Let's get to it. Alright, so here we go for the approach.
Welcome back. We're in the descent into Barcelona, on our way down to flight level 90. At around this point of the flight, 10,000 feet, we turn on the seatbelt signs and instruct the cabin crew to secure the cabin for landing. Cabin crew, prepare the cabin for landing.
Jetliner 488, expect ILS Zulu runway 24 right.
ILS Zulu runway 24 right, Jetliner 488. ATC have told us that we're going to land on runway 24 right by performing the ILS Zulu approach. Enter this into the FMGC by clicking Flight Plan to display our current routing. Next, click on the button next to LEBL, the ICAO code for Barcelona, written in white. Next, click the top left button where it says Arrival. This brings up a list of all the available arrivals in the navigation database. Now use the up arrow to scroll through the list of approaches until you find ILS 24 right Zulu. Click on it once you find it, being careful to select the correct approach.
Oh, come on.
After selecting the approach, you see it displayed in yellow on the ND. Press Insert to activate this approach.
What the world is that? We definitely got to clean that up. Surely that's not what they want us to do.
Once below 10,000 feet, our 250 knots speed restriction applies. Select a speed of 250 knots.
Landing lights.
Jetliner 488, descend altitude 4,000 feet, QNH 1010.
Descending to altitude 4,000 feet, QNH 1010, Jetliner 488. Set 4,000 in the alt window on the FCU and pull for open descent. Just like switching the altimeters to standard during the climb into the flight levels, we're now switching back to altitudes. Push the baro knob and set a QNH of 1010. Great, now we're back to using altitudes for our height reference.
Jetliner 488, direct to Tebla.
Direct Tebla, Jetliner 488. Press direct on the FMGC and enter Tebla as our direct to waypoint. You can type Tebla in directly or scroll through the list to find it, pressing insert. Good, this cuts out most of the arrival and gives us a better idea of our distance remaining.
And normally ATC doesn't do this for us.
Turn on the landing lights to make us easier to see.
Jetliner 488, speed 210.
Speed 210, Jetliner 488.
What Why's this on? Some type of bug going on here. There we go.
Before landing, we use the FMGC to activate the approach phase, which allows the FMGC to control our speed on final approach. The approach phase will activate automatically when we reach the decel point on the ND, or you can activate it manually.
So I really like how they showed you how you can clear up your flight plan right there. That's something that's very helpful, something I do a lot, jumping to direct waypoints to get out of a bunch of mess like that, or when you have these really sharp corners, like up here with that really sharp corner. Normally ATC is not going to tell you to do that in the sim. I realize that ATC is kind of unreliable in the sim when it comes to that. It's something you just got to do yourself. Up here, I wonder if they're going to make us do it again, or if they're going to make us do a heading change to cut across. I would assume, because that's what I always do, is we're going to do a heading, come in through here for a smoother transition, because this here is going to put us out here and it's going to be wonky. See what happens with this.
Let's talk about how we decelerate and configure the aircraft for landing. On the PFD speed tape, notice the amber-coloured equals sign. This represents the maximum speed for the next stage of flaps, called VFE next. Before extending flaps, we make sure that our speed is below VFE next, otherwise we'll overspeed the flaps. A typical deceleration profile for the A320 begins with extending flaps 1 and setting a speed of 180 knots. Once we're on the approach, we'll extend flaps 2 and take 160 knots. Let's start configuring. Check your speed is below VFE next on the PFD and select flaps 1. We can get a big boost in lift from the flaps, known as ballooning, but allow the autopilot to take care of this. Now select 180 knots.
Right on the money. Alright.
Jetliner 488, descend altitude 3,000 feet.
Descending 3,000 feet, Jetliner 488.
Want mine flaps too. So curious about this. Sure, this is correct. BCA, yeah. Normally I personally would put a slight change in heading here and go from here to here and make a smoother transition into this.
Jetliner 488, turn right, heading 170.
Oh, there we go.
Right heading 170, Jetliner 488.
That's not something that ATC
Set a heading of
I don't think
170
ever
in the
will tell you in the
FCU
sim.
and pull to select. For this approach, we're going to follow the ILS. Before doing so, we need to ensure that the correct ILS is being displayed. Please check that the ILS ident Bravo Charlie Alpha is displayed at the bottom left of the PFD, which is the correct ILS for runway 24 right. If not, you have the wrong approach selected in the FMGC, which will need changing right away.
Jetliner 488, cleared ILS approach, runway 24 right.
Cleared ILS approach runway 24 right, Jetliner 488. Now that we're cleared for the approach, arm the approach mode by pushing the approach button on the FCU. Now the autopilot is ready to capture and follow the localizer and glide slope. Lock mode has engaged, which will capture the localizer.
Never done it that way. Setting approach. I've always locked them individually. Huh. Wonder if that works outside this training. Have to check that. I've always done it differently to catch it. But it says we have glide slope locked.
Glide slope mode captures and descends down the glide slope.
So we'll see if these two Ninja Diamonds line up.
Now extend flaps 2. And bring us back to 160 knots.
$2,500.
Coming in.
Looking good. Gear down.
Yep, locked us up, huh? I have to try that. Always done it a little bit different.
Now that the gear is down, arm the spoilers. Now set flaps 3. And finally flaps full. Now push the speed knob for managed speed. The speed target is now magenta, indicating we're in managed speed, giving us our target approach speed.
Jetliner 488, cleared to land, runway 24 right. Wind 210 at 16.
Clear to land runway 24 right, Jetliner 488. Landing checklist. Cabin secured for landing. Auto thrust speed. Go around altitude 3000 set. ECAM memo Land no blue. Landing checklist complete. Now disengage the autopilot and fly manually. Now fly us down to the runway visually. At 50 feet, look to the far end of the runway. Then smoothly raise the nose a little to reduce our descent rate and move the thrust levers to idle. After touchdown, allow the nose to gently lower onto the center line. Auto brake low is selected, which will handle the braking until we're nearly at taxi speed. We'll exit to the right. Look to the end, flare, and thrust idle.
20. Retard.
Allow the nose to lower smoothly. Passing 70 knots, press the brake pedals to disengage the auto brake. Slow us down to a taxi speed below 30 knots. Take one of the exits to the right.
Alright, so some things there that I do a little bit differently that were shown to me that were very interesting. Now I'll have to investigate which one is more the correct way and which one is not. I would think what we just learned here is the correct way. I know two ways of doing this, which is why I kind of hit the runway
well done.
hard there. That's not normally how I do it. I normally control my speed myself.
Parking and shutdown.
So yeah, so I believe that one there has been one of the most helpful ones yet so far. Like I said, it showed me a couple things that I do a little bit differently that give the same effect. But I'm sure their way is probably more of the right way. It makes more sense. I'll have to try that outside of this to see if it still works the same way. My landing was definitely hard, but I normally don't use the managed speed when I'm coming in. I normally do an indicated airspeed and letting that go, cutting the auto throttle right before minimums, and then controlling it all the way down, getting that perfect flare and smooth landing. So that was something that I was not used to. So that is definitely something I want to work on for sure, because that kind of alleviates another thing you got to do. So that definitely very helpful. I think it's probably been one of the most helpful ones yet in this whole tutorial. So as always, guys, I am Pilot 83. Thank y'all for y'all's love and support of the channel. Come join the Discord, guys. The Discord is growing. We are rapidly on our way to 1,000. Come down there and join. We got developers in there. We got group flights with the moderators and admins daily. That's where I announce the group flights that we do each week. The next one will be this Sunday. I'll be announcing that tomorrow. We have Top Gun right around the corner on Wednesday, 2 days. So the sim and the beta with this patch seems to be fixed for the most part. So keep fingers crossed that when the final patch releases, this is it. But until next time, guys, Sim's flying really great for me now. I am Pilot 83. Follow me on Instagram. I'll see you on my next flight. Happy flying out there, y'all. Peace. If you made it this far, thank you so much. If you like this video and you feel like I earned your subscription, please hit that subscribe button and that like button so you don't miss out. Until next time, guys, see you in the air.